Welcome back. Wanted to make a video to tell you a little bit of what's happened this last week in my in-person game. A couple things that stood out from the session, which, while not quite as phenomenal as the week before, was still what I felt was a really successful role-playing session. The first thing I wanted to mention was we had a moment in the game where it could have, what was going on, the events they were right on a knife's edge. It could go two very different ways. And in that pivotal moment, one of the characters that was doing something, a really important action, had a critical failure on the dice. I called for a skill check, a dice check, and it was a critical failure. And I just wanted to mention how it highlighted, that event highlighted for me how important it is when there is something that's very interesting that can transpire, to let the dice have some say, to throw those fancy math rocks out and see what happens. And I'm so glad. I don't root for player failure, but in this one case, and I guess it's not really me rooting for the player character to fail. It's just that the outcome was so much more interesting because of that critical failure. And then other things happened, and it just, the story developed as we played, and I wasn't sure where it was going to go, but I was very happy at the end of the session. We talked about what happened and how that was a bit of a pivot point, and it was really cool. So that's a good takeaway. It's a good reminder that there are some times that, I really hope this works, but maybe instead of worrying so much about whether or not that specific check or that action is successful, I'm not really even worrying about that, but just how can we make the outcome more interesting? And that's what happened in our game. I thought that was good. The other one, and this is a bigger topic, and I just wanted to share some thoughts on this one. I like to have NPCs populate the world. I don't want the world to feel empty, like the players are moving through the world via their characters, and the characters are just very seldom coming across anyone. And when they do come across that rare instance, when they come across another character in the world, it's such a rare thing that they're like, oh, automatically it just feels different. I like to have my world, whatever setting we're playing. If we're playing in a Western, we did a lot of time in a Wild West setting. We're currently we're in a transition right now because we went from Wild West to a science fiction setting, and now we may actually be going into something different next week. And as we go into these settings, I like the settings to feel full, like they're full of people, they're full of other characters. And while I'm not obviously going to have time to populate an entire star system full of individuals and all with their own goals, it should still feel that way. It should still feel like it's not just this empty space. Unless that's what you were really going for. But in my settings, I like to have that, there's a huge world around you, and you're just in that little corner of it. And the more you move from one place to another, the more of the world is discovered. However, and this is a big caveat, as much as I enjoy having a large cast of NPCs that may or may not be of any interest to the players, that may or may not even interact with the player characters, that's up to the players to decide who they interact with. I don't ever want to be caught running the hero of the story. I don't want to be the GMPC where I played in a game once where we were all vastly overshadowed by the hero that the dungeon master was playing, and we all felt like we were playing second fiddle to this. It was really, it really hurt what would have otherwise been an interesting story that developed over time, and a nice guy that was trying to do his best as a dungeon master. I don't want to be too hard on him, but it was just such a terrible. It was a wasted opportunity because this dungeon master had to have his hero and the hero just could do everything that any player could do, but better. And so we all just kind of sat back and said, well, we'll just let this guy, I guess we're supposed to let him just do everything for us. And that was a game that it fell apart very quickly. And I think it was because of that GMPC. So as much, I want to have, and I had talked about how I want my NPCs to have more personality. And that was just so that there could be more interaction and encouraging players to be more spontaneous. But at the same time, I want their characters to display personalities, varied personalities, whatever the players decide their personality should be. So I'm trying to do that also with my NPCs, but I don't want to overshadow what the players are doing, because they're supposed to be the heroes of the story, not my characters. My characters are there so that if anything, just to highlight how the players are doing, what the players are doing, their characters. So I want to encourage them to always think of themselves, and when I say them, I want my players to always consider themselves as in charge of the heroes. But I had this one, as is sometimes the case, you may have found this too. Sometimes we have an NPC that for whatever reason, it's so easy to get into that NPC's headspace. And I had a lot of fun with this character that I was playing. She was just a really, I just had fun playing her. Like it was a fun thing. The personality was cool. She was a good, not a foil to the party. She was just a good offset for a lot of the players. And it was, so I was at one point, and we talked about this after the game was over, and we talked about the story and what had happened, and I had brought this up. I said, well, you know what, I have these NPCs, and what do you think about the NPCs? And tell me what was it? Like what worked and what didn't work? And they're like, oh yeah, we really liked this NPC. It was the NPC I liked too. But I posed the question to the players as we had this conversation. At what point does my NPC risk becoming too much of the story? Too much of the adventure is pivotal on her and not you. You're the heroes, remember. This is supposed to be you doing heroic things, or whatever you choose, or anti-heroes, whatever it is. But the spotlight should be on you, not on me. And so we had a bit of a conversation that they didn't think that it had crossed that line, but it got me thinking about where the line is. Where is that line where an NPC has fallen into that GMPC trap? And how can I avoid that trap by anticipating because the problem is that I'll get super excited about an NPC, and then all of a sudden I'm like, it's great to have this NPC in this scene, because look at all the interactions that are happening because I've got this character there. So one of the thoughts I had, and I'm still thinking about this, I don't have all the answers to this, I just posed the question: when does a GM's character start to become too much of a focus? And what I thought was this: if I could stay with NPCs, if I can stay consistent with what their motivations are, so their long-term goals especially. Short-term goals may be more influenced by what players are doing around them, but if their long-term goals, which should be there should be a much higher degree of stability on a long-term goal or long-term motivation. If I can stay with that, then hopefully that'll keep me from hogging too much of the limelight. Like if you, as you can imagine, those of us that really enjoy running the game, sometimes it can be because we enjoy the spotlight a little too much. I think that's my case for sure. And the problem with that long term is that it encourages players to be too passive, and they show up at the table expecting just to be entertained. And why is that a problem? Well, I think that's a problem because it's detrimental to their engagement and immersion into the role of whatever it is they should be playing. They're just expecting to be drawn along and entertained in a story that is just essentially told to them. They're just spectators rather than being active participants. And I'm looking to encourage active participation. So those are the two things I wanted to talk about tonight. I just wanted to mention that, how in this last week, it was a critical failure that caused an abrupt, a change, a pivot point, but that pivot point ended up in a much, much better place, perhaps, than if that skill check had gone well. So it's important not to hand wave everything, and that's a good reminder. As much as I emphasize in all my games, I emphasize the role play. It's important to have those dice there, because it introduces that randomness that can prevent things from getting stale and predictable. It's that element of unpredictability that can, and it certainly did in this week. It makes a big difference in a good way. And I think it's good to embrace that. And then of course, this ongoing thoughts that I have now of, as much as I'm doing better at role playing these NPCs and giving them personalities and believable traits and quirks and all of these things, and many of these are randomly generated as well, is just to get the ball rolling, and then I'll go from there. But I don't want to overshadow the players. As much as I enjoy doing this and having, I had mentioned in a previous video, like pushing the contrast a little bit, being a little over the top. But I'm asking myself the question: are my efforts to push the NPCs more into a believable or a memorable character, is that starting to risk pulling the player characters out of the limelight? And they need to be the center of what's going on. But to not absolve players of all responsibility, players really need to take ownership of that too. The players have to own that idea that we're the principal actors in this. Our characters are the catalysts for what's happening, and we should be acting constantly with that in mind. So it's a partnership, of course, as most things are. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you get a chance, I'll put the link in below. Go and take a look at the actual play that Rick from 28mm RPG and I did recently with Big Bag RPG. I don't know if he wants me to tell you this, but he hasn't run very many games. I think that was number 3 ever. And I thought he did phenomenal. I thought he did really well. My first time playing a game with Rick, and I had a great time playing with him. Rick is just such a nice guy. I really like Rick. And we had fun. We didn't know much about each other's characters or anything like that. We were just a lot of improvisation, and I think it turned out okay. It wasn't, certainly it's not going to reach perfection, but it was enjoyable. It was really enjoyable, and I hope people watch it and enjoy it. And maybe there's something to learn there. I'm certainly watching it again and just making notes. Okay, I could improve there, or that didn't work out so well. I may want to take a look at what I'm doing in that one area or what have you. But take a look at it, and you might enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching these videos. Please like, subscribe. I'd love to hear your comments below, and maybe tell me your thoughts. Where is that line between NPC and GMPC? Because most of us will recognize GMPC is bad idea. Don't want to do that. But NPCs, yeah, definitely want NPCs. So I'd love to read your comments on that. Thanks for watching this video. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.